Good evening, members. We're ready to start the meeting. It's about 7 o'clock. I'd like to welcome you to the September Brexit meeting. And let's see. Wait. First thing, I have two apologies myself from Councillor Wilson and from Councillor Robinson. So I'm going to go to the group leaders now for apologies. I'll go to Councillor Maguire first.
Agur Margaret Anthony to Berchogamanucht. I have two apologies tonight from Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly and Councillor Siobhan Correa. Agur Margaret Anthony, thank you.
Thank you, Tommy. And I go to Councillor Garrity now for the SDLB.
Chairs, Councillor Coyle here. Mary's apology.
Okay.
So is Councillor McPhillips and so is Councillor Gannon. Thank you.
All right, thank you, John. And I'll go to Victor now.
Thanks, Chair. The only apology that I have is Councillor Robert Irvine, and I myself will have to leave about 8:20. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Victor. And as we have apology from Councillor Robertson, I'll go to Earl, Councillor Thompson for the DUP's apologies. If Earl's there. Let's go on ahead there, Earl. You must be on mute, Earl.
Sorry, Chair. Obviously, you've got Councillor Robinson, but yeah. Councillor Deborah Erskine is running a bit late and hopes to join us later. Thank you.
Thank you, Earl. And I go to the independents and small parties now. If anyone wants to come in there. No, I see nobody indicating, so I go on to item 2 now, which is saying in the minutes of the previous meeting. I've already done that. So item 3 is declarations of interest. Nobody indicating. So go to item 4 now, and matters raising, and I'll go to page 1. On page 2, there's an item. Sorry, Bernice.
No problem. Just on page 1, just to note, I was in attendance at the meeting, and it's proven later on in the minutes as well, where I have voted on various matters. So I just noticed I'm not recorded as having attended. That's
okay, Bernice. The minutes will be amended accordingly. So I'll go on to page 2 now, and Kim is going to come in here at 4.2. Okay, Kim.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So we do have one item of correspondence from Bob Strong, who's the Chief Executive of Advice NI. And this is in response to correspondence from the Council. And he has outlined that he has consulted with local members in the Council area and with staff. And really, I suppose the gist of his correspondence is that the pandemic has eclipsed Brexit and is providing some difficulty in terms of evidence to support the impacts of Brexit.
Okay, thanks for that, Kim. So I'll go on to page 3.
Excuse me, Chair, could IT attend to Councillor Thomas O'Reilly, please?
Oh, sorry. Okay, yes, I'll get on to somebody. Tommy, yes, kind of a proposer and a seconder to note the correspondence there. Sorry, I forgot to ask that.
I'm happy to propose that as well, Chair. Tommy.
Thank you, Tommy.
I'll second that, Chair.
Second by Councillor Thompson.
Okay, look, just before we would move on, I would just like to make the point, and while Bob Strong's response has said that the pandemic has eclipsed discussions on Brexit, well, we all know too well that it's still very topical and it's high on the political agenda everywhere. Now, while we know the pandemic has impacted many things in terms of trying to seek out information for research and everything, can a response be asked? Indeed, you know, if there was an indication from him that even currently it mightn't be suitable to obtain all the information on the impact, but certainly that we're not just going to forget about it, because it's rather pertinent to us in the border area, I would say.
So are you making that proposal, Bernice, is it?
Yes, please, just to make sure that that important suggestion and recommendation in the first place doesn't fly off the agenda. It was relevant at the time and it's still relevant. I'm not sure who made it, but it's still very relevant. Guramagat.
Okay, that's okay. Can I have a second for that?
Tommy McGuire.
Enough to second that, Chair.
Thanks, Tommy. And all agreed? Yeah, I should take silence as all. Sorry that I was mixed up the pages there. Right, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, and page 8. Thank you. Right, so that's all that. So we'll go on to item 5 now, and we're going to receive presentations from Shane and Kathy from ICBAN, is it? Yeah. Okay.
Welcome.
So I'd like to welcome them now.
Good evening, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you okay. Can everybody else hear Shane okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Chair, to the members of the Council, to Director Kim and staff. I'm joined this evening by my colleagues, Dr. Katie Hayward and Dr. Milena Komarova from Queen's University Belfast. We're sharing the presentation to you this evening, so I'm going to kick off and outline 2 areas of research, and then Katie and Milena will then follow up and talk about research that they've been completing in its emerging findings relating to the impacts of Brexit and the Northern Ireland Protocol on people and their lives in the region. And it's, as I said, there's emerging findings. In the next number of weeks, we'll have the report out. So I very much welcome the interest and the opportunity here from Ananoma District Council to meet with you this evening. We're actually doing is sharing with you about 3 areas of research on Brexit that we've been involved in. And I'm just going to queue up the first presentation here, so bear with me a moment. Chair, can you see that okay? Okay, the first area is the implications of Brexit for the region's strategy, called the Framework of Regional Priorities. The Framework of Regional Priorities, the Council will know, is the strategy document that ICBAN has completed for the Central Border region. We completed work on it about this time last year, but then took a couple of months in which we were seeking the formal supports from Ananoma and the other 7 member councils of our area. In the meantime, the Trade and Cooperation Agreement between the UK and the EU was agreed. What the board were seeking was, at that stage then, to look at the implications of what that Brexit deal was and is for our strategic ambitions and the aims for this region. And we're indebted very much to Duncan Steele, who was a Queen's University Belfast intern who worked with us for 4 months until May 21. And this is Duncan's presentation, and it's an outline of his research, which is available at that link. I will do my very best to try and do Duncan's work justice, but would first of all say to you that I'm certainly not an expert on Brexit, on the protocol, and I'm very much indebted also to Katie and Milena here this evening. But what I will talk about is, as I see it, and the key pertinent points of its impact or implications for the practical opportunities that we're looking at for this region. Duncan's report looks at what Brexit means for the Central Border region, and he also then touches on the political context. But then he looks at, in some detail, the implications of Brexit and the protocol for 4 of the 5 key themes of the Framework of Regional Priorities, and I'll go through those. The first thing I'm going to look at is just really, in a sense, to try and clarify the political and economic arrangements that have evolved as a result of Brexit. And we'll look at 2 things. We'll look at the Withdrawal Agreement briefly here, and that's the detailing the terms of the UK's departure from the EU. That includes the protocol in Ireland and Northern Ireland, and the reason that document and procedure is in place is to work to withstand any physical infrastructure on the island of Ireland, leading to a hard border again, and also to try and maintain and enhance North-South cooperation. But it's also looking at checks and controls on goods moving from Britain to Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland is aligned with EU regulations for certain goods, and therefore there is a need for these checks and controls, and the Withdrawal Agreement includes that commitment. Then you have the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, and that details the future trade and security arrangements between the UK and the EU. It notes and it looks at the divergence between the challenges of divergence between the EU and the UK on cross-border cooperation. And in divergence, we look at any changes, well, I suppose in terms of where we were as Ireland and the UK were members along with another 26 states of the EU, and the EU was that framework that meant that there was an alignment around the trading of goods and services and the movement of labour, etc. Where that is now changing with the UK leaving and having left the EU, we're looking at challenges of divergence around laws, legislation and regulations that would impact on trade and on cross-border cooperation. Now, we note that within it there are level playing field provisions that are intended to try and help stop divergence, but it's very much a challenging area. These are the 5 key themes of the framework of regional priorities, and I'm going to look at 4 of these and the implications of Brexit and the protocol on these. And the first one is economic development, and this is the area where Brexit will have probably the greater impact, particularly around the opportunities and the challenges for the central border region. In terms of goods, we're looking at the fact of dual market access for businesses based in Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland businesses now have an opportunity to trade with and in 2 key markets, the single European market and also the UK market. Now, Northern Ireland remains in the single market for trade of goods, so producers must align therefore with EU regulations. But what we're also seeing is we're seeing change as a result of a supply chain development. There are frictions arising between on the trade of goods from Britain to Northern Ireland. We see that in quite a state of flux at the moment. Now, with regards to the trade of services, Northern Ireland no longer is in the single market and no longer has regulatory alignment with the EU, and therefore there is 2 distinct service markets that we must trade with, and each of those has their independent regulatory regimes, which opens up that complexity. With regards to labour movements, the Common Travel Area arrangements allows Irish and UK citizens to work across the border. However, with this, there is the loss of access to the EU labour market. So in terms of risks, we note political uncertainties could damage the economy of the area. We note that no longer any mutual recognition of professional qualifications, although that's been worked on a sector by sector basis to address that and to get support complementarities, and that Northern Ireland businesses could face labour shortages. There are opportunities in having this dual market access, still early days really, I suppose, in many respects, and also in the supply chains flux, where we see the businesses, if there's dealing with frictions from in the market of Britain to Northern Ireland, are looking towards, and we see increased trade opportunities with the Republic of Ireland and then also wider into the EU. The chapter on greening the region looks at our green aspirations and our response to climate change. The whole FRP is really a response to climate change, it's a response to the pandemic, and it's a response to Brexit. EU membership has profoundly shaped environmental policy across the UK and Ireland. We note that, and we note that also the climate and environmental challenges won't stop at the border, so the best responses are a coordinated one. Northern Ireland's environmental governance is now characterised by some uncertainty, and that uncertainty is a result of the fact that Northern Ireland is the only devolved region of the UK that hasn't its own independent regulatory body for the environment. And therefore that creates challenges in terms of administration and compliance around governance. Also, with regards to agricultural policy, it's of key significance to future efforts to green our area and that alignment between agriculture development and environmental considerations. And of course, farms and farmlands contribute significantly to the life and economy of our area, our region. And therefore, any divergence can be a key risk to the integrated and collaborative responses that are required to tackle the green challenges. Northern Ireland's new agricultural policy will then be independent of CAP, the Common Agricultural Policy. In terms of opportunities, we note civic level initiatives to enhance engagement. And the final two pillars that I was going to look at are livable communities and human capital. And this is very much about how Brexit impacts on education, on employment, on the job training, and just day-to-day lives of people in the region. And Milena and Katie will update you further on some of the recent findings from this of our other study. But in general here, what we're looking at is that the Common Travel Agreement between the UK and Ireland alleviates a significant degree of disruption, affording various generous rights to citizens in either jurisdiction. However, EU citizens that's not Irish or UK citizens who wish to move to Northern Ireland to work won't have that right. Now, there is a commitment to reciprocal healthcare in the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. However, access to EU cross-border healthcare directive will cease as a result of Brexit. And that provided great opportunities. It was taken up by a number of people in Northern Ireland in the past who wanted to organise planned treatments in other EU member states where there would have been shortages here of treatments or lengthy waiting lists, and that therefore is no longer the case. Now, we have existing specialist healthcare shortages, and we anticipate that these are only going to be exacerbated as a result of these new trade and political agreements. And that's really as a result of complexity, the labour pool challenges, and also the issues around the non-recognition of qualification or mutual qualifications. Education provision will be largely unaffected by Brexit, and we note Irish Government support to enable Northern Ireland students to continue to participate in the Erasmus Exchange programme. And then very topically is the whole area of consumers' access to getting goods. And if disruption relating to the protocol continues, well then Northern Ireland consumers could well experience a continued reduced availability and higher prices in the shops and online. That really concludes the first piece of research, and this is just the last second piece of research that I'll just cover on this slide here. But that first one is our consideration of how Brexit will impact on our delivery of the Framework of Regional Priority Strategy document. We continue to review that, continue to look at the implications of it and take on board those issues as we work to develop projects and as we work with both governments, with the councils on both sides of the border and communities and funders on various projects. These issues may rear their heads, so it's good to have those considerations. And that report is a very useful report to read. I would appreciate, I haven't done it the justice that Duncan could do, but it's available on NICBAN's website to have a quick review of. Now, just the second report, and this is a piece of work that ICBAN was consulted in. It was led by the EU Committee of the Regions, and it's called Restoring Lost Connections between the EU and the UK as a consequence of Brexit for local or through local and regional authorities. So it's examining the impact of Brexit on the function of the local and regional authorities and analysing the lost connections between the UK and the EU at these levels. And this could include partnerships that are being developed between local authorities from here and elsewhere then within the EU, and also with Britain and the EU as well. But also exploring potential and possible avenues for future cooperation. The report's available at that link. It's a new report that just came out last week. And a few of the key areas that I wanted to pinpoint and bring to your attention, first of all, dealing with the third one, and that is that tourism, construction, agriculture and social care labour markets are expected to be the most affected by changes in border crossing procedures following Brexit. The rest of these points relate to funding, and the members will probably be well aware that the UK is continuing within the existing Interreg programme until about 2023 when that finishes, and when the financial commitments and the delivery commitments of projects and initiatives will conclude. Now that's the EU Interreg programme to 2020, so it will continue to close until 2023. However, the UK is not involved in the next EU programming round, and that's for the period of 2021 to 2027, the new round. The UK is, though, keen to continue involvement in the future EU Horizon Research Programme. So there are opportunities for the UK and Northern Ireland to be involved in Horizon, or I suppose, with that setting a precedent, to be involved in other programmes where there is an interest that's reciprocated, an interest by the UK reciprocated by the EU, which would be funded then with contributions from the UK. The Irish Government will provide the support for the Northern Irish students to participate in the Erasmus programme, as I've mentioned, and it will be the Shared Prosperity Fund that will be the direct replacement, or seem to be that direct replacement, for EU structural funds. Now, the UK Government hasn't expressed a clear indication of willingness to participate in Interreg programmes as a third country, or to fund, or to engage in other forms of cross-border cooperation in the future. However, bring to your attention that Scotland and Wales and even Gibraltar have expressed an interest in participation in future EU cooperation programmes, territorial programmes. However, as I'm aware, the Northern Ireland executive position is unclear, and it certainly wasn't highlighted within the report. And that may be an area that the Council, maybe an area that ICBAN and other local authorities may wish to take up and to bring to the attention of key powers that are involved in these discussions. And finally, that really underscores the point that the possibility that the UK joins a future Interreg programme as a third country, where there could be some means to do so. We know that the Interreg and the other EU programmes have been very important for the border region, but for Mananoma and other areas, but that's quite limited. Chair, that's just a very, very quick resume of two reports that we've been involved in. I'm going to try and stop the share. And I can hand you over to Dr. Katie Hayward and Dr. Melina Comerover to complete our presentation, and they'll be talking about our other report called The Border After Brexit. Katie.
Thank you very much, Shane, and good evening, everybody. I too have a PowerPoint presentation to share with you. I trust you can see that okay. So yes, I'm just going to run through the initial findings from the Border After Brexit, which is our most recent report that we in Queen's have been working on with ICBAN, and we're very grateful for the partnership there. This is the fourth one, and as some of you may recall, we had the original one in late 2017, bordering on Brexit. Brexit at the border was in 2018, and then the Border into Brexit was published at the end of 2019, just towards the end of the transition period. Now, of course, we've been conducting this research in the context of us having the Withdrawal Agreement and the Protocol, and also the Trading Cooperation Agreement between the UK and the EU. There are three parts to this study, so essentially we're using a similar model to the one that we've used in the previous three reports, so an online survey, and thanks to everybody who completed that. We got 403 responses, although there are a few duplications, so in essence it's 394 that we've been able to use as unique responses, and we know they're unique because we're asking people for their qualitative comments as well as to tick boxes in a Likert scale. And it's those qualitative comments that really give us a lot of information and examples as to how people are experiencing Brexit, and I'm not presenting in detail on that now, but happy to answer questions on those. There are also some focus groups which were conducted online as necessary, and interviews which Melina has been conducting, and those interviews we chose them on the basis of particular issues that we saw coming up in the survey. Obviously, EU citizens, non-Irish EU citizens are a particular concern, so we have a really good interview there. And then education, cross-border workers, health and food processing. Plus, also we've had a so-called temperature gauge ongoing since the beginning of January, which has been basically working on keeping an eye on what's been happening with respect to the protocol and Brexit. And we've been doing some blogs for ICBAN on that too. So that forms the basis for this research. So just very briefly, I'm going to give you an outline of the responses. So it's more or less half and half in terms of Northern Ireland and then Republic of Ireland responses to the survey, which is great. For Manor and Omagh, 15% of our survey responses came from there. Last year, or the last one in 2019, it was 30%, which was extraordinary. But this is still a really good response rate. 1 in 6 of our respondents who voted in the referendum, so obviously most of those south of the border didn't have a vote in that Brexit referendum. Those who did, 1 in 6 of those who are answering our survey voted leave. And as with our previous reports, we've got a section in which we consider those responses in a bit more detail, just to get that perspective coming on through in the report. So our headline findings, we struggled a wee bit to generate a lot of interest in our survey, and I completely expected this because everybody's got survey fatigue at this time. But what turns out actually from our responses are that it's not Brexit fatigue in terms of people being interested in it. So notably here, most of our respondents are saying that Brexit has increased as a matter of importance for them since last year. And the vast majority, as you can see here, well over 3/4 think that Brexit is very important or considerably important to them. And then in terms of the impact that Brexit has been having, half of our respondents say it's had a significant impact, some of them very significant, and 1/4 are saying it's been insignificant. Bear in mind too, we've got respondents from both sides of the border here. And then we were asking, well, is the impact of Brexit worse than you expected? And notably, half of our respondents are saying, yes, it's worse. And this is quite an interesting finding, given that our previous reports have been showing that most people had quite negative expectations when it came to the impact of Brexit. So even though they had negative expectations, the impact of Brexit has actually been worse than they feared it might be. And then when we look in detail, and as I say, I'm not going into the comments here, but basically what's coming out is when you ask for examples of impact of Brexit, most of these are economic, and they tend to be, most of them are negative, although some people are talking about opportunities from the protocol. And we're familiar with these comments: change of suppliers, increased cost of services, and we've got some good respondents in our focus groups and in the survey from who are businessmen and women, and they give some specific examples on that. However, when we talk about what you're most concerned about in terms of the impact of Brexit, and indeed the protocol, it's societal concerns that are the most prevalent. So most people are talking about concern for political stability in Northern Ireland. Many people talking about good relations, cross-border relations and cross-community cooperation. Those are the kind of things that people are worried about in terms of the reason why Brexit is still very much important to them. I will skip through these just for the sake of time, but I'm happy to answer questions on that and on. So in terms of, obviously, we're interested in cross-border cooperation, this coming from ICBAN, and we see that community relations between North and South, cross-border projects between councils, and indeed business development, cross-border cooperation is seen as important, or very important indeed, across all of these areas. We're also asking about looking ahead, and interestingly, more than half of our respondents to the survey think that that concerns around a future harder Irish border are still very valid, and around 1/3 saying no, they're no longer concerned about that. And again, that's pertinent when we consider how important people are considering cross-border cooperation in this post-Brexit, post-protocol context. And as is necessary, as is coming through in a lot of the qualitative comments, people's experience of cross-border cooperation and movement have, of course, been very much shaped in this past year and a half or so by the pandemic. And this comes through in our questions around how COVID restrictions have impacted people's normal access to services. And we've got some good qualitative data on this as well about what that's meant for people. We see a wide range of issues coming up, including the cross-border health care directive, which I should just mention. Obviously, Robin Swan has announced in June that they will be temporarily extending that, so it is still possible for people in Northern Ireland to access services in the south and get that claimed back according to the terms of that directive. So that's good news, but it is just temporary. And then optimism and pessimism. People are saying that they are more pessimistic than they were even this time last year about Brexit. And when you link that into the qualitative data and some of the other issues that are being raised, this is very much about the political atmosphere, I think, rather than more specific technical or economic matters. And then when we're looking in more detail about what people feel optimistic or pessimistic about, you can see here that they're more optimistic around cross-border travel and tourism, least pessimistic around good relations between communities in the border region. So to conclude, Brexit, according to our survey responses and then the details in the focus groups, has had a very significant impact already, which is worse for many people than they expected it to be. People's economic experiences and social perceptions are very much entwined in their views on Brexit and its impact. Most concerns around Brexit and the protocol focus on political stability and North-South cooperation, even though some people are keen to point to the opportunities that they're already experiencing or see as potentially coming through with respect to the protocol. A big issue is uncertainty. A big problem is the lack of information or confusion that exists around information arising from Brexit, or that's necessary to have as a consequence of Brexit, and some of what Shane's been sharing there gives you some indication of the complexity there and why the lack of information can have such negative consequences. And we see good examples in this report of practical difficulties arising from uncertainty and personal experiences of that too. And then with respect to cross-border cooperation, there's less optimism about the future compared to the way it was even last year. Most pessimism about good relations, but most optimism about cross-border movement, travel, leisure tourism, and a real emphasis upon the value of cross-border cooperation between councils and between governments and executives in terms of what value that can bring in real terms to the border region. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. And oh, sorry, somebody else coming in now. Sorry about that.
So this is my colleague, Dr. Elena Komarova.
Okay, go on ahead. Sorry about that, interrupting it.
No, I wasn't going to speak actually now, but I'm here to answer any questions, especially those that might be linked to the qualitative questions, the open-ended questions that we asked people, on which Katie did not have much time to present on.
Okay. Thank you, Katie and Shane, for that presentation. Very in-depth presentation there. So I'll open the floor up now for if anybody wants to ask any questions or make any comments. Don't have to be a question. Okay, come on, Councillor McAleer there.
Thanks, Anthony, and thanks for the presentations there. Very informative. I suppose from my own point of view as a councillor in Mid Tyrone, there's a number of things that would have been highlighted to me, and a number of things that I would be very concerned about with Brexit, both prior to the vote and as it's been implemented. And I know you've touched on a number of them there this evening. The impact or the potential impact on human rights, on workers' rights, and on environmental rights. And I noticed that one of the slides, I think, that was presented early on, Shane, that the environmental governance is characterised by uncertainty, and I suppose the drive for extractivism and a focus on, I suppose, trying to promote extractivism as a way of extracting or retrieving renewable materials or to support the renewable industry. So that's obviously a very live concern in my own DA and within this district. But I was just wondering, I suppose, first off, if we could get a copy of the presentations, if that would be possible. And secondly, I suppose, in terms of your own outlook or your own perspectives, do you have any inkling or any idea on the future impact or the potential impact on, I suppose, those three tenets of human rights, workers' rights and environmental rights as we move through the process of the leaving the European Union? Thank you very much.
Do you want me to? I can go first, Ian. Thank you. Yes. So I think there's I mean, you point to three things. I would distinguish between, so human rights, obviously we have Article 2 in the protocol, which is about non-diminution of human rights as relate to the section of the Good Friday Belfast Agreement on equality, rights and safeguards. The question is what that actually means in practice. So what human rights that covers. So in theory, at least at the very basis, it's the European Convention on Human Rights. But you could have a very limited interpretation of that protection that's offered there, or a more generous one. And I know at the moment that probably the best thing that we have to ensure a more all-encompassing interpretation of the protection of human rights is through the dedicated mechanism that's working involving the Equality Commission, the Human Rights Commission, and then the counterparts in south of the border to try and make sure that constant monitoring is happening with respect to human rights. But that does not include workers' rights per se. And because the protocol is, the main part of the protocol, for the most part, is around, the legislative underpinning of the protocol is primarily around goods, as well as a single electricity market. There are concerns that there's gaps with respect to workers' rights and also around environmental governance. That said, what becomes more important in that context is the environment within which you can have north-south cooperation between the relevant agencies. Article 11 of the protocol is very broad. That's about north-south cooperation, and that does say that there should be that north-south cooperation, including in the area of environment, should be maintained. However, in terms of detail and legislative underpinning, it's quite weak. So I can't do anything other to be honest about that and be aware of what the protocol doesn't cover as well as what it does.
Okay, thanks for that, Katie.
Chair, if I could just make a quick comment regarding the availability of presentation and reports.
Yes,
yes, can be made available. I can certainly make the two parts presentation that I've completed this evening here available. Katie, we're probably looking at the start of October, really into October, for the full report then to be made available. I'm sure we'll be sharing that with the councillors here as soon as that is available. That'll be on both the Queen's and the ICBAN websites, and there'll be publicity as usual around that, and we'll be striving to ensure that it's brought to the attention of those involved in all the discussions and considerations around Brexit, as we've done before with the three previous reports.
Okay, that'd be very useful. Thanks for that, Shane. I'll go on to Councillor
Chair,
McIndoe.
could I just very briefly?
Okay, brief, Emmett, brief.
Yeah, thank you very much. No, thanks for your response and thanks for your cooperation and circulating that. I think it's exactly the points, Katie, you've highlighted. I think the weakness in some of the legislation and the fact that it is open to interpretation and how it's going to be implemented is a very real concern. And again, Shane, I think it was another thing that you had touched on, the fact that this part of these islands is the only area that's lacking in an independent environmental protection agency, even though it's committed to in the NDNA agreement. And for some reason our Environment Minister seems to be very intransigent and moving forward, and that is another real concern. But no, thank you for your honesty and for your presentation. All the best now. Bye bye.
Okay, thanks, Emmett. Go on to Councillor McAlough now.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And welcome Shane and Katie and Elena. Thanks for the presentation so far. My questions would be around Interreg programs, and if the British government or the UK government discontinues, after 2023 with any involvement in Interreg, can you give an assessment of how damaging that would be for our communities, socially, economically, and otherwise? What has been the story of our benefiting from Interreg programs, and if that was to be discontinued? And then I'm always glad to see that point that local students in the north are still going to be able to participate in Erasmus programs. It seems a bit of an anomaly, but it's a kind of a welcome anomaly. It's a good thing that that is going to be taken care of. And then finally, these structural funds to be replaced by the Shared Prosperity Fund. Is there any insight into whether or not the Shared Prosperity Fund would be of the same order as the structural funds? Thank you, Chair.
Anybody want to reply to that? Shane or Kathy or Melina?
Yeah, I can come in initially, Katie and Melina, and in response to Councillor McAlough's questions there. In terms of the existing Interreg programs, beyond, I suppose, 2023, the only exception that we will have, as I understand it for sure at this stage, is the Peace Plus programme. So it's a programme worth 1 billion, and that's a programme that is just for the island of Ireland. That is including both the peace elements that we had in the past and also the Interreg programme between Ireland and Northern Ireland, and that's all in the combined Peace Plus programme. Now, in terms of what else happens, well, that's still open to possible debate, I suppose. There may well be this involvement in the Horizon programme. There may also be neighbourhood programmes of the EU with third countries that the UK may well participate in. But I believe that is yet to be all resolved, as I was mentioning earlier. In the past, in terms of our challenge of replacements, we would have had the UK's involvement. Now I take it that this is Northern Ireland to a large extent then as well in the border counties, 5 cross-border programmes through the EU, through the territorial programmes, 6 transnational programmes, 4 interregional programmes, that included Ireland, Wales and a number of others. The impacts on this region have been, I suppose, for many years on economic, social and environmental terms. And Councillor McAlough asked that key question about, well, what will replace them? I've been involved in consultations around the Shared Prosperity Fund, and it's kicking in, I suppose, next year. But all indications point to that the Shared Prosperity Fund will not replace on a pound for pound or euro for euro basis what we would have had before under the EU structural funds, unless there are significant changes to it. That the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, my understanding was that it was to become a cornerstone of UK regional policy post-EU, post-Brexit, and that will provide support for the developed regions, including Northern Ireland. But it's going to be competitive. I understand as well in that we will have to compete for funds to London, to the centre of wherever these are administered from. We had a meeting a number of months ago with Minister Conor Murphy. We've also had meetings then with the Oireachtas Joint Committee for the Implementation of the Good Friday Agreement. We've had regular meetings with the Shared Island Unit. And those meetings are very much around, well, let's try and plan for future supports to replace what we could lose. It's the fact that the border region has had pre-existing issues continuing for many years before the advent of Brexit, and we still have these challenges. And the 1 billion of Peace Plus funding, though welcomed, is probably not going to resolve all of those gaps in and issues that we have for infrastructure, societal impacts and environmental considerations that is needed. The Minister Murphy, is that he's appeals to point out that there is continuing engagements between the executive and the UK government regarding these funds and replacement funds and how we could avail of it. There is the opportunity for the shared island funds as well, of course, to provide for infrastructure supports. What the border region really needs is between both governments engaging together on some agreed programme, policy or agreed intervention area that provides for our futures after 2027. And the debates and considerations around that needs to start much sooner than the end of the Peace Plus programme's effective rollout in 2027. And that could be some kind of a multiplier that looks at funding that the Northern Ireland Executive Assembly can put into the mix, along with hopefully a continuation of funding from the likes of the Shared Island Fund. That we can then see some agreed supports, agreed interventions between both governments on this island to address the regions or the issues of continuing cross-border deficits and challenges in the interest of balanced regional development. I hope I answered that question, but maybe Katie could come in as well, or Milena.
Thanks, yeah.
Just very briefly on Interreg, I mean, it's extremely unlikely that Northern Ireland would have any access to Interreg, or Scotland and Wales, because the EU doesn't tend to do that. So Norway and Switzerland participate in it, but they pay for it. And the UK government, as Shane has already said, is not likely to do that. And the EU doesn't, at the moment anyway, doesn't do that on a subnational basis for non-member states. And then on the Shared Prosperity Fund, Shane has already answered that very articulately. And obviously it's the point, there's a slight irony here in that with regards to the structural funds, the way that they were set up meant that the devolved regions and nations could have some say around how those funds were distributed and what they were requesting from the EU. And that's, as you know, it's a matter of contention at the moment as to how the Shared Prosperity Fund is going to be distributed and allocated, given that UK government ministers now have spending competence spending powers in areas of devolved competence. So again, that's one to watch. And then on Erasmus, it is very good that Northern Ireland students have access to that. Indeed, it's been welcomed by Northern Ireland universities, but it's a complicated arrangement in that they do so through Irish universities, so essentially they will, they're sort of registered in Irish universities in order to get access to the Erasmus programme, which just makes it that much more complicated. We already have difficulties in encouraging students to participate. And there's still uncertainty. It doesn't look like, there's still uncertainty around the degree to which European students can access Northern Ireland through that Erasmus programme now. Because they'd have to do so through Irish universities. And as I say, it's not clear yet exactly if that would be possible. So it's better than nothing, but it's not as it's nothing like the way it was before Brexit.
Thank you.
And just a very brief comment to add, if I may, to this, which comes from some of the responses in our research, particularly from focus groups, but also some of the open questions in the survey. People were very concerned, very much aware of the pending loss of peace funding to a great extent. And this was mentioned on a number of occasions as a concern for its negative impact on community relations in the border region, which is said to be already lessening as a result of the tensions over the past year and since the end of the transition period. So this is something which is a kind of a very much at the forefront of people's minds as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll go on to Councillor Howard Thornton next. Go on ahead there, Howard.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a question for Katie. It's just to bring you back to your survey. You talked about 400 participants. I think 396 you said were what you classed as valid. With regard to the makeup of that, I've seen it, but it didn't get time to actually catch. How many of those, was it 396, classed themselves as British? How many classed themselves as Irish? And there was another category, was it Northern Irish? I'm not sure. It's just, I didn't pick it up because it wasn't quick enough as you were going through there. I'd like to know the breakdown there. And the second issue, I would take it that this is just off the street interviews or participants. It's not necessarily towards business, or there's no focus towards business. Just to clarify those points, please.
Yes, absolutely. So, apologies for going through it too fast. So 3/4 of our respondents are Irish citizens. We didn't ask a question of identity. We asked about citizenship. Interestingly enough, we had a greater proportion of British citizens answering this survey than we have in previous surveys, and essentially, fewer people having dual citizenship or other citizenship. And then it is self-selecting. So, and as we have done in every single report, and we're very keen to say this isn't like random sampling, it's a different type of method. So you would expect that those who are participating in this survey are interested because they've taken the trouble to go ahead and complete it. But nonetheless, you know, those headline findings are useful to see quite how, particularly given that now we're able to compare back to how people were feeling 2 years ago, etc. But I really place an emphasis on the qualitative comments because, as I say, that's where you get the kind of the richness of the data. We did get a good number of people responding who say they were in business. I'm involved in other surveys with business organizations. This is a different type of survey. It's obviously serving a different type of purpose. We give good a platform to those detailed issues that businesses are bringing out. In our survey, they're both very negative and very positive, and that's the nature of the beast. Some businesses are doing very well out of Brexit and the protocol, and others are really, really suffering. So we hope to do, to represent that fairly in the report. But obviously, as with any type of research, and I do lots of different types of survey research and polling analysis, I'm always keen to emphasize the limits of it as well as the value of it.
Thank you, Kathy. I'll go on to Councillor Chris McCaffrey next. Go ahead there, Chris.
Thank you, Chair. No, an interesting report, and it's interesting to be having this discussion. And I want to thank Katie, Melania, and Shane for presenting us tonight. The last discussion leads into my question. I was wondering if there's any sort of substantive evidence to show that businesses in any capacity are benefiting from Brexit. I think that the protocol by and large has worked very well for the North. We know it's not ideal. It's not what the people in the North of Ireland wanted or what they voted for. But I think by and large it is protecting our trade with the rest of Ireland and with the EU, while allowing us to trade with the UK as well. But I think the real damage that's been done from Brexit is the enduring uncertainty about what will happen. As we said, trades and goods have been covered in the Brexit negotiations and in the deal, but services haven't. So, for example, UK firms are going to find it increasingly difficult to trade with the European Union, and the further the UK move away from the European financial institutions and political arrangement, the worse the cost will be, in the increased cost of Brexit. And I suppose there's a huge issue with financiers in London those firms now are going to have difficulty trading with Europe. That could well lower the currency of the pound, which obviously has a knock-on impact on our economy here in the north of Ireland. So I suppose the question really lies in, what damage has been done to businesses here, or has the protocol actually helped to protect protect our trade and protect our relationship with the European Union?
As like a headline finding is that it's a sort of a mixed bag, and as I say, it depends really on which sector you're in and which type of business and your existing supply chains, etc., as to how you're experiencing this. I'm going to hand over to Milena, who conducted an interview with respect to food processing, and that was quite a balanced, useful interview in terms of illuminating some of the like the swings and roundabouts, if you like, of the experience of Brexit and the protocol in that industry. Do you want to say something?
Thank you, Katie. Yes, so just to confirm this kind of headline finding of there being quite a mixed bag of experiences, and some of those that come through the survey come from possibly smaller businesses, and I can give you a couple of quotes even as an example of negative effects on business. So people saying things like export business with Canada finished, 17% duty applied on goods from UK, can't get essential goods from my business into the country as easily as before, it stalled our business output because we couldn't get raw materials, and so on and so forth. At the same time, as Katie mentioned, in one of our interviews, I spoke to somebody from the agri-food sector from a larger company that have had years of experience of exporting not only to Great Britain, but around the world, and whose business depends very much on just-in-time supply chains on both sides of the border. And because of that previous experience, what they shared with us was that they had the time to develop the expertise that is now very crucial at this time to deal with the additional paperwork and with the additional checks. And so much so that even their suppliers from Great Britain, who are finding it very difficult now themselves to export to Northern Ireland, are getting some training from this company who has this experience. So you have really kind of the full spectrum, if you like of experiences in that regard. And I suppose one of the conclusions from this is that the bigger company you are with more experience of international export from before Brexit, you're probably likely to be dealing much better with that. But at the same time, the kind of emphasis, even from this respondent, that it is difficult to see how small enterprises are dealing with this situation now, having to hire additional staff solely for the purposes of filling in additional paperwork.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's an interesting findings. I would have also thought that the impact on the labour pool would be significant, especially for Britain, more than ourselves. Thankfully, we've been able to still allow this access with the European Union. But are there any reports? Do we know what the impact on, the lack of immigration, how will that impact labour? How that surely will affect staff in businesses across all sectors?
Katie, are you going to respond to that, or shall I?
Yeah, sorry, struck my mute button. Yes, absolutely. It doesn't come across loads in our report, in our survey. It's not raised. It might have been because of the timing of it. So we concluded in June, and I know that increasingly the question of labour shortages arisen. As I say, I work quite a bit with different business organisations and umbrella bodies. And I know research is being conducted on that now, on that specific issue. But at the time, if I'm being honest, it doesn't come across as a major concern from our respondents. But that might, to go back to Mr. Thornton's question earlier, that might be because we're not seeking out business respondents.
No, that's fine. No, thanks very much for taking the questions. Appreciate it.
Thank you for them answers there. I go to Councillor Diana Armstrong now.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the presenters this evening. It is a highly complex area, and I mean, day on day, month on month, we're thrown with more and more challenges. But my question again is following up on economic investment. And have you found in your research any indication of interest in investment in the border region, in this region, as a result of Brexit? Bearing in mind there is a thought that the benefits of it, will increase investment in our region. So I'd be interested to see, have you come across that in the research you've carried out? Thank you.
We definitely have a few respondents who talk about that dual market access point that Shane has mentioned earlier, and stress the potential benefits, and even say that being in the border region does give very specific benefits, obviously with proximity to literally to the EU single market right there on the doorstep, and also of course to GB. But given the nature of the study, it wouldn't be, we're not seeing anything in terms of concrete examples or statistics or anything in that regard, but there are some people who definitely point to that and the particular unique benefits to be found as they see it in the border region.
Thanks, Katie, but this is more localized information than nothing, no sort of indication of international interest in the region because of these prescribed benefits.
No, but again, we wouldn't necessarily expect that given the nature of this survey. And I know obviously Invest and I have got some data on that, and in particular headline findings with regard to international interest. They're seeing a lot of positive interest, I think, but yeah, the nature of our study means we haven't really got that.
Okay, thanks, Katie. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Josephine Deehan next.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presenters for coming and sharing their research with us. And I suppose it's very interesting, but it's very concerning as well. I think members will be aware, Chair, of the rising costs of construction materials, timber and steel and virtually all of it, the cost of which has risen by a third or more. And naturally that has big implications for the construction industry, but also for public procurement and even for the domestic householder. So I wonder, can you comment as to why that is happening? Does it in fact have anything to do with Brexit, or is it related just to world markets? Thank you, Chair.
I'm by no means an expert in these matters. From what I gather from businesses who are in that sector, it is a very complicated picture. Part of it is Brexit related, for example, with respect to tariffs on certain goods, steel, etc., and the complexities around that, as affecting goods coming into Northern Ireland, which is a matter I know is the UK and the EU are trying to resolve very quickly. But also a Brexit-related matter in that we have the issue of labour shortage, particularly driver shortage, that has knock-on effects in that regard. But also it is very much an international picture as well. So it's complicated, and as I say, I'm not enough of an expert to be able to give you any more detail, I'm afraid.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And I see nobody else indicating here, so I'll just have to, as I said earlier on, thank you again for your presentation and for your very honest, in-depth answers. I'd just like to thank the 3 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, okay.
Thank
So
you.
we'll go on now to item 6 to provide a verbal update on the present position, and that's going to be done by Kim.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So in terms of the verbal update on the current position, Just a number of items to report. Firstly, this week the government set out a new timetable for introducing full import controls on goods being imported from the EU to the UK. It is said that full customs declarations and controls will be introduced on the 1st of January 22, while others, including safety and security declarations, will not be required until the 1st of July 2022. Lord Frost also made announcements recently on Brexit opportunities, and that was delivered to the Commons. It said that EU law retained after Brexit will be improved or repealed if they do not benefit UK citizens and businesses, and a range of individual regulatory reforms were also announced to improve digitisation and innovation. There also has been some movement regarding common frameworks, and these are being developed jointly by the 4 devolved nations of the UK in a range of policy areas. However, the DEFRA Secretary of State has now said that the frameworks process, which was previously expected to be completed by the end of 2021, will now be delayed, and that DEFRA will need more time to coordinate those agreements with the devolved administrations. Just also to note that the DEFRA committee has also launched a new inquiry into labour shortages, particularly in the food and farming sectors, and MPs are inviting written evidence up until the 8th of October on the factors contributing to those shortages. The committee has also written to the Home Secretary, highlighting the committee's deep concern about labour shortages currently affecting the food supply chains. And just also to note that first meetings have been held of specialised committees on energy and on fisheries, and those have brought together EU and UK officials to cooperate on implementation of the Trade and Cooperation Agreement in those areas. And they highlight areas such as electricity trading and negotiation of the fishing quotas, which require further work over coming months. Those are the key items, Chair.
Thank you, Kim, for that. And I see Councillor Swift here indicating to ask a question. Come on ahead, Benita.
Yeah, Kim, you'd mentioned about a report that they're talking about at the start of October. Can we have input to that about the labour shortages, or do we wait for the outcome of that report? Is that it? Do you have a little bit more detail on it? Because if we do and can have an opportunity to have input to the report at this stage, I would be suggesting and recommending that we would do that, given our issues in this border area. Guramagat.
Yes, Chair. Just to note that that has been invited by one of the committees, DEFRA committee, and I would imagine that we would be welcome to submit evidence.
That's grand. So does it need a formal proposal then, Kim, here now? And if yes, I formally propose that we proceed with that, please. Guramagat.
Yeah, that's okay, Bernice. Can I have a second for that?
I'll second, Chair.
Second, proposed by Bernice and second by Josephine, and all agreed. That's okay. So we go on to item 7 now, correspondence. We have no more correspondence, only the one we did earlier on. So that item 8 is AOB, and I've one item here, but I shouldn't really be bringing it here at all to this meeting. It's not really relevant, but it's just a one-off. I'm going to let it go because it's kind of a topic that I'm very interested in myself, and it would have to wait to the next council meeting. So I'm going to let it go tonight, but I'm not going to make a habit of this. So, and I'm only it's not going to go out for debate at all. I'm just going to get a proposal and a seconder. So I'll go to Councillor Swift now.
Yes, well, it is relevant, and while it's not relevant to Brexit per se, and it's probably something in standing orders, I do think we do need to change about what is any urgent or relevant business, because it's never usually relating to the particular committee. Anyway, yes, you, like me and other councillors in the area, are very much involved in what I am talking about here tonight, and lots of people have been contacted. It's particularly to do with the Intergovernmental Panel on the Climate Change report. which was released. And we have been lobbied by the continuing campaign fracking groups, and they have asked, as we had fully discussed at our committee meeting many months ago, calling for the immediate moratorium on prohibiting the onshore petroleum licensing fracking. And you will remember, and members will remember, the Hatch report that we engaged. I'm led to believe that the Hatch report has been completed and is with the department since early July this year, but has not been made available to the public just yet. Now, I cannot fully substantiate that information myself, but I think it does no harm to ask the question and to please contact the relevant department, as Fermanagh and Omagh District Council were fully at the coalface of engaging this particular report, that we ask for a copy of the report to be made available. And that's just all I have to ask for at this point in time. Gurmagat.
Okay, Bernie, so that's your proposal, that's okay. And I see Seamus indicating here. Come on ahead in, Seamus, there.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'll formally second that, please.
That's okay, thanks for that, Seamus. And are we all agree to that? Yes, I see nobody indicating. So that concludes the meeting, members, and I'd just like to thank you all for your participation and be on the first meeting that I've chaired in a long time, and thank you very much. And we'll date and time for the next meeting in further course. Thank you.
Good man, Anthony.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Chair.
All the best, Chair.